Say we gon' set your day right, yeah. Na, 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 na. We gon' turn it up nice. Na, 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 na. Get ready for the time of your life. We bring the vibes and we bringing it right. We're the Brunch Bunch, doing it right, doing it right. Go we on here and we ready to bring the fire. Turn the radio up. Go we on here, we're the Brunch Bunch, take it higher. Turn the radio up. Go we on here and we ready.
So we covered the Ohio young lady who got killed by the police, Ma'Khia Bryant, and then we also got a former police officer to call in and lend some clarity to it. Once again, we want to thank him. But I also want to explain why we have the position that we have about this particular incident. Only in America can the police respond to a separate call with very similar incidents and have two drastically different results depending on the race of the suspect. A variation of the dichotomic truth continued to play out in real life and continues to play out in real life when you see the difference between a police arrest in white America and a police arrest in black America. They have the ability to police their own very effectively.
Yes.
And our call, our demand is that you do the exact same thing in the black neighborhoods. Yeah. Now, the officer who, our believer, our listener, called in and said it was a good shoot. It was a justified shoot. Yes. No shooting is good. So I'm going to rephrase that. Thank you. It was a justified shoot. And be that as it may, I saw a video last night. Thank you, Charles, for sharing that video with us. But there was a white gentleman. He came outside to two police officers with guns drawn. And the gentleman had a large knife, almost the size of a machete, and he was chanting some kind of cult sayings, and he was waving it at the police. And the police kept saying, "Keep it up, you're gonna get shot." But he kept it up. He got as close to him as I am to Matt, waving this knife, and I want to say wand. And he said, "Get off my property." Now, see, black people do not say things like that because when the police come, there's a certain level of fear that intensifies and tends to make black people be quiet. Mm-hmm. Well, this gentleman was white. And he kept saying, "Get off my property, and if you don't get off my property, this is what's going to happen to you." He walked around the cars so that he could actually go to the second police that was on the scene and walked back into his house, untouched, unscathed, and unarrested. That's where I have the problem.
This is America.
It does not matter if it's America. And because it's America is why it should be leveled. When you have a constitution that looks like ours, that gives the rights to people who are naturally born in America, but do not actually allow them to exercise those rights, then that's where we have to start our struggle.
Well, you don't even have to be naturally born in America. If you become a citizen, you have those same rights. But unfortunately, those rights are like a dream deferred. It dries up like a raisin in the sun.
But it cannot
be. It can't.
No, it cannot.
But it is, and that's why the singer rapper I just quoted song says, "This is America." It may not be the America that the forefathers envisioned when they wrote the Constitution.
Of course not. They didn't envision putting us in that equation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So, what is this America?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit further and tell you what this America is. In September, when a white suspect who allegedly killed 8 people in 3 separate shootings in Georgia bore all the hallmarks of a racist attack on Asians, they arrested him with dignity. Robert Aaron Long, the prime suspect in an apparent hate crime near Atlanta, was considered armed and dangerous when he briefly led the police on a car chase prior to his arrest. Amazingly, however, despite Long's alleged kill in cold blood spree, he was arrested with dignity.
And the commander said in a news briefing he was having a really bad day.
Yes. I could go on and on and on about how it plays out so much differently in black and brown neighborhoods than it does in white neighborhoods. And that's where we have the problem. That's the overarching message that we are trying to send. We, the Brunch Bunch, are trying to send. It's not whether or not it was a justified or verified, or if some officers even say good shoot. It is the fact that it's so disparagingly different in different neighborhoods. We've got to bridge that gap. It can't be an arrest by color has one set of rules and an arrest without color has a different set of rules. It's got to be across the board.
Well, that's where the disparities come, but I want to go deeper into that, because after watching the video, you look at people around the world are looking at America as a country where police shoot a teenager, a 16-year-old, 4 times, and then say it was justified. But Kyle Rittenhouse, whose video was taken 15 minutes before he allegedly shot and killed 2 people, he was carrying an assault rifle. This was up in Milwaukee. And the video showed the officers share water with him. They thanked him for his presence. After the shoot, he was able to leave the scene, even though protesters were shouting to the police saying, he just shot 2 people. And the police still didn't harm him. They didn't use deadly force. You talked about Aaron Long. Let's talk about Dylan Roof, who in June of 2015, he killed 9 churchgoers, African-American churchgoers. And he was treated so kindly by the police that they even took him to Burger King.
And what that's called is taken into custody with care. Now, I don't condone any loss of life, and I don't care who the shooter is. If you go out and you kill somebody, you should be held to the highest extent of the law, and whatever maximum situation, whatever maximum penalty that you are supposed to get, I think you should get. Due process, absolutely, but certainly you should get the maximum. But give them an opportunity to have their due process. Give them an opportunity to go to court.
Yeah.
To have the defense that the Constitution affords you. Give them that right. We know you know how to do it. We've just given 7 examples of you know how to do it.
Yeah.
Do it everywhere.
Well, Don Lemon and Andrew Cuomo last night, Don Lemon was taken up for the officers and said that we have to tell the truth. I believe we have the sound from the interview. We'll play it later. I disagree with him so much because of these type of situations. And then he tried to compare it to George Floyd, and in a way where, what happened to George Floyd shouldn't happen, but then said, well, she had a knife and the officer had the right to shoot to save another life. But it's not. Let's compare apples to apples. So if Don wanted to talk about that, he should have talked about the Kyle Rittenhouses, the Aaron Longs. Since George Floyd's case in March, there have been 59 police-involved shootings that ended in death. In the last year, there have been 156 shootings. May 29, 2020, since May 29, 2020, over 156 mass shootings. Since May of 2020, there have been over 130 officer-involved shootings that ended in death. And that is a sounding alarm that something has got to change. Because where is the de-escalation when there are black and brown people?
I don't know, but if you happen to look at this video, because of the nature of the language that they're using, you will not see it on the Brunch Bunch page. However, if you can go on to your social media platforms and look for the video, you will see that this was a exercise in patience on the police part. But we have to be something doesn't just have to change. We have to be the change agent.
Yeah. Now, today is the funeral of Dante Wright, who was killed by the police a couple of weeks ago, we reported. And I watched an interview with Congresswoman Karen Bass, a Democrat from California. She made a very, very, very great point. Dante was stopped for expired tags, but due to COVID, most DMVs have been closed, and they've had to extend these expired tags. So she pointed out where we have to at the federal level change laws, and I believe they have a bill we'll digest and dissect later. But they have a bill on the table that they're trying to get passed. But she said that black and brown people are disproportionately pulled over because of their race. And just, you see a black person, you pull them over, and then the excuse is, well, the tags were expired. And I know that to be true because, during COVID, I couldn't find nowhere to get no plates or stickers. But thank God it was extended.
No, that's absolutely true. What I do want to lend a different perspective on is that if it's nighttime, typically the police are not stopping you because you're black. They are stopping you because you either have an entire expired tag or your headlight.
Well, you said they're not?
No, they're not. They can't see you. No, they can't see you.
Who said that game?
I know. Absolutely. You know how many times I've been stopped?
Please, at nighttime, because I got tinted windows, this is true story. And it's sad that I have to do this. When I'm leaving, like my parents' house, or I know I'm in the hood and it's too much activity, I let all my windows down. Why? Because I want them to see me, because I look like a square half the time anyway. So I want them to see collared shirt, I'm sitting up straight, because the windows are tinted. I don't even want to give them a reason to pull me up. It could be dead winter, and it said that I have to do that. I almost took the tints off the window.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that they don't necessarily see color, but once they have stopped you, that's when it gets murky. That's when the problems start to become a step. Now, Sandra Bland, different case. It was daytime. I'm not talking about the stops that are in the daytime. I'm talking about the ones that are at night. You just look, all of you guys, take a test. When you're driving at night, look in front of you and see if you can see the race of the person in front of you.
And you know what? I'm going to answer yes. And you know how I know that? Because I look at people when I'm driving. You got to watch your setup, what they say. But no, here's the thing, too. When you live in suburban areas where there are not a lot of street lights, it can be a problem seeing. But when you live in the city where there's a million street lights, visually, I can see people next to me.
Maybe so. I'm talking about, like, rural.
No, ain't nothing about rural, Sister Mary. We talk about the hood where they shining lights because they want to see who in these cars. So, but it's a sad case on either part that we get, judge.
It's a sad case, but it's a great opportunity for us to affect change. And not to say each time, they had this, or they had that, or they had a gun, or they had a knife. They shouldn't have had any of those things. None of them should.
Yeah.
But where it gets disproportionate is the treatment. And I've said it, and I'll say it again.
Well, I'm glad you said something about change, because I want to pose a question to the believers. How do we change the culture? How can America, when I say we, how can America change the culture of policing? And I want the believers to call 312-591-3878, 312-591-3878. Call in, let us know. What do you think? How do we change the culture as a country? Tammy?
Unfortunately, and this is really a sad testimony of where we are in America, but during the crack epidemic, millions of black people died, right? No reform, or very little reform, very little rehab resources. When the heroin epidemic started affecting white America, white youth, there was so much money poured into reform, rehabilitation, programs. And I hate to say this, but it resonates true that until police start shooting other than black children, then that's when it's going to take notice, and that's when change is going to come. And I hope it doesn't come to that, because I take care of children of all, and we don't see race. You know what we see? Opportunity, an opportunity to educate and put a child on the pathway to progress. But that's not how we're seen outside of the classroom.
I'm glad you guys are at the premier child care center. Brother Action Jackson sees race, because that's all I got to see right now. But you know what? No, I did want to just mention, whenever we get into something, that's when laws change. You know what? Prohibition, illegal alcohol. A lot of successful white people made money off of illegal alcohol. They don't talk about that. The Kennedy family came from and got their wealth from illegal alcohol. Then they legalized it when, you look at history, the Bumpy Johnsons of the world got involved into it. And they're like, all right, let's just make it marijuana. For many, many years, they've been making so much money off of it. Then it became a black thing. Because you think about now, everybody just said, oh, we, black people, all they do is get high. Now, white America has institutionalized it to make money. So, with the heroin, I was riding through the hood the other day, and I saw a white crackhead. And I said...
It's a heroin head.
Oh, heroin, crackhead, heroin head. Them even worse, He wouldn't have been walking as fast as he was. That was crack. No, but listen. But, the point was that I looked at him and I said, this is when the problem started to kind of get fixed. When their nephews and brothers and cousins and sons start coming to the hood. Because when I was growing up, shockingly, you saw a lot of white crackheads in the hood, just, out there. But you don't see as many anymore. But, it's sad that the things don't change until they're affected. And they use these type of spiritual warfare and drug warfare to take us out. And then when we're not the ones that affected by it, they start changing. But we got a caller on the line that wants to answer the question. Caller, what can we as America do to change the climate?
We as believers, our greatest power is prayer. That's what it is. We have to continue to collectively pray for God's intervention to change the hearts and minds of white people, not all, but the ones that see us differently, that see us as less. And then the sister there is right. Until white children start dropping like flies, the same way the black children are, then that's when the change will come. But other than that, it's not going to happen anytime soon.
I thank you, caller, for calling in. That was
very
a great
profound
point. That was very, very profound. And as believers, we do have to pray. The Bible teaches us the heart of the king is in the master's hand, and we believe that God is the master and he can change the heart.
Yeah, and I really appreciate her having that profound comment, because when you say that prayer doesn't work, and then you look out and you see how prayer has manifested itself in everything that you do, in every atom and molecule that you see, prayer was a part of that. So we do have to continue to pray until something happens. Push!
Push. Well, we're going to keep pushing on this Throwback Thursday. Call in. Let us know. 312-591-3878. How can we as America change the culture? But we as believers, like the caller just said, have to continue to pray, because there's something about God's grace. Don't go nowhere. We got way more to share. Some of our listeners might have missed yesterday or don't even know what's going on. So if you don't know what's going on, in Columbus, Ohio, a police officer who shot and killed 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant has been identified as Nicholas Reardon. Bryant was killed just as the nation got the word of Derek Chauvin's conviction for killing George Floyd last May. Around 4:40 p.m., a woman called 911 to report a disturbance on the southeast side of Columbus. Reardon was the first officer to respond, and it didn't take him long to draw and fire his service weapon. Bryant was killed. Reardon has been taken off the street and pending an investigation. Reardon has been with the Columbus Division of Police since 2019, according to WLWT5. The Daily Beast reports that he is a U.S. Air National Guardsman and received an expert marksman badge with an M4 carbine. He also appears to be the son of retired Sergeant Edward Ted Reardon, a 32-year veteran of the Columbus Division of Police. What is particularly troubling, as the Root explained previously, is that the city officials already appear ready to justify the shooting. Columbus Mayor Andrew Ginther said Reardon was protecting the other girl Bryant was fighting. But it is clear the girl he was supposedly trying to protect was also in his line of fire. Reardon's use of force is widely criticized as unnecessary because officers around the country regularly resist using force against armed white men and boys, as we reported earlier. We talked about Kyle Rittenhouse and Dylan Roof, who both shot and killed people in their rampages. They were apprehended without using force. The January 6th insurrection, the January 6th insurrection attempt in which law enforcement declined to use force in many instances against the mostly white MAGA thugs and terrorist crowd raised questions over how officers selectively choose when to draw their weapons. Brian's neighbors certainly felt the deadly force wasn't necessary, according to the Daily Beast. So I want to, and I quote, the teenagers' neighbors were also shocked by the shooting. Charles Williams, a 63-year-old neighbor, told the Daily Beast that when he arrived at the scene, officers were still standing around after Brian's body had been taken away. Neighbors had begun to gather and were chanting Black Lives Matter, Williams said. The officers responded by chanting Blue Lives Matter, and we reported that yesterday, but this is coming directly from a neighbor. Police have not yet commented on the video that emerged overnight showing a police officer shouting Blue Lives Matter to a group of upset residents. Williams, who is a staff minister at a local church, added that the video of Brian's shooting clearly shows that the officers failed to warn the teenager before firing. And I quote, "This girl did not have to die," he said. The officer, after he shot her, other police officers, whisked him away. Another neighbor, 23-year-old Tammy Taylor, also believes that the officer could have used other means to restrain the teenager. His taser was in a more reachable spot than his gun, Taylor, who arrived at the scene shortly after the teenager was shot, told the Daily Beast. He could have tased her. Another neighbor, Rosemary Ellison, who lives in the area, believes Reardon should be criminally charged in Brian's death. The thing that's concerning is that there were other officers here before Reardon arrived. They didn't see a threat. They didn't use their authority and position to the extreme, Ellison said. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation is investigating the shooting. Several hundred protesters took to the street in downtown Columbus yesterday with chanting Black Lives Matter and say her name, Ma'Khia Bryant. What I also found out is that Ma'Khia Bryant was a foster child. She was the one who called the police because a group of girls followed her home to jump on her. She called the police, and I believe she called her grandfather and her foster mother to try to get help. But she came out to defend herself with a knife. I saw Whoopi Goldberg, and I saw her like we was talking. Yeah, me and Whoopi were talking this morning as I watched The View, and Whoopi made a great point. When you grow up in the hood, like I have seen these type of things transpire over and over again, where girls get together to jump a girl. And sometimes when you're young, you don't think, you go get a knife because you're trying to protect yourself. But it could have been, I believe, and the retired officer who called yesterday made a point. In their training, it was a justified, and I quote, air quote, a justified shooting because of imminent danger and the threat. But when do we change these laws and the training? Because why don't we shoot to Lane, like Stay in Your Lane said yesterday on Facebook? Why couldn't she have been shot? He's an expert marksman, right? He couldn't shoot the gun out of hand. The knife. He couldn't shoot her in the behind. He couldn't shoot her in her calf muscle to make her fall over a little bit.
Well, to your point, if you're policing with care in white neighborhoods, then you have the ability to take a person into custody without shooting them at all, without tasing them at all, because that's police discretion. I don't think it's training. I think that you elected to use deadly force because for whatever fear, and I'm talking to all of our white believers out there now. Like, you don't have to fear black people. We don't have a history of slaughtering neighborhoods in your communities. That's not intrinsic in the culture. What we need to do is really start to put more money into race relations at the government level, at the policy level, and have some real, authentic, intentional relationship building activities so that those fears can be quelled and people can start to see how we are so much more similar than we are different.
Yeah, reading that is just draining. I'm seeing two sides to this story. I'm seeing people say, well, that's their job. And then I'm seeing people, like the, justified shooting. I wrote down a quote and I left it. The commander got on the press conference and said, I believe he said, and don't quote me on this, I believe he said he had, because of he saw imminent danger, he had the choice to use deadly force. So that word, that operative word, choice, means to me when I heard it, he could have done something else.
I mean, they display it all the time. He could have done something else. And if she was in danger, she had to defend herself, but now she's dead, and she's the one who was in danger. She was the victim turned deceased.
Well, you know what? There's a lot to this, and the question still remains, how can we as America change this culture? Because the culture is that in America, police kill people, kill the people that they're protecting and serving. And not all police, but when you have so many police-involved shootings that end in death in black and brown communities, so maybe I should say in America, police kill black and brown people, but it's a sad situation, and especially the day that George Floyd conviction came out, because when we thought we won a small battle, there was another battle ensuing at the same time. That's, if he gets off, cancels out. It's almost like the but. All right, we got this message to police that you can't kill black people, but now we got another officer that just killed a 16-year-old black teen. So that means you can kill black people and see no repercussions. But let's see what the caller has to say. Caller, you're on the line. What's going on?
I'm going to start off with two cliches, and this is really bad. But I'm gonna stop there. I'm going to go there. First of all, we fear what we don't know. These white policemen don't know us, okay? And the next thing is you reap what you sow. Okay, now look. Everybody asking what we gonna do. We already know what to do. Just like we knew that black folks gonna have problems with COVID. They didn't know it was so much in the black community because we got food deserts. Okay, but listen. First point is you feel what you don't know. The police years ago, I'm dating myself. The police had to live in the neighborhood. The policemen, the firemen, and the teachers had to live in the neighborhood where they were. Okay, Now that was taken away. So there was white flight. They left out of these neighborhoods. When the police were in the neighborhoods and the teachers and the firemen, they knew these children. They knew the people. And because they knew them, they did not fear them. You fear what you don't know, okay?
And you reap what you sow. That is amazing.
They had neighborhood programs, good neighborhood. They still got them. Good neighbor programs where they gave firemen and first responders and teachers and gave them incentives on their home and their mortgages to be in certain areas, meaning underserved areas. They still have it because they know it works. If policemen and firemen live in the community, they knew the children, they knew the people, and instead of shooting them, they would go and talk to them. And
they were their neighbors.
They were their neighbors, and they knew them. And they would go over to the children's house and talk to the parents. Those children did not go to jail. They didn't go to juvie. The policeman talked to the parents and said, Johnny is doing such and such. You better check it. Okay.
And then they sent them to resources, to programs.
Resources, and they said, so I'm just saying, we know what to do. We've done it, but we got away from it. We defunded those things that work. So what do? Go back to what works. We know what works. We just not doing it. Okay?
So right.
Is this Miss Betty?
Yes.
Hey, Miss Betty, listen, you are so right.
Jackson, my son. I'm so happy for you. I'm like, thank you, Jesus.
Thank you. Miss Betty has been listening since I started this show.
But I love you, Valencia. Okay.
Love you, Miss Betty. Love
you
you.
too.
Miss Betty has been listening.
The village, what Miss Betty was talking about, that's the village. And now we've stripped the village of all its powers.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. Miss Betty, I did want to shout out. Since the first day we were on, she called in. I was on. She called in. So she's been listening faithfully for 3 years now. But she made a great point. Dr. King preached a message, I believe, in 1960, whatever year he preached it. But the title of the message is Rediscovering Lost Values. And we don't highlight that. We highlight his I Have a Dream speech. But I urge everyone to listen to this sermon or read it. And it talks about how we have to go back and rediscover some of our lost values, like Miss Betty just said. We need police to know us so they don't fear us.
That's right.
People don't have to reap what they sow. When you sow seeds despairingly, you reap them despairingly.
That's right. You're exactly right. Well, you know, I think that the beat cops were important, particularly in businesses, because they served a purpose for business, and then they also went into the community. And maybe they didn't live there, but they lived there. Do you know what I mean? Like, they didn't have an address there, but they had a stake in the community. And these stakeholders have now moved out of the community. I noticed, I've counted, I was on the west side a couple of weeks ago, and I counted how many white police I saw. And I'm not saying that you can't be white and still live on the west side, or you can't be white and still have a affinity to the community. All I'm saying is disproportionately I saw more whites than blacks. And so what happened to police in your own neighborhoods? Because maybe you have a different connection to them.
Well, that's a whole nother day of topics, because it's smoke and mirrors with this police recruitment as well, because the police, you know, we worked with them to make sure that we market and advertise for people. I know a bunch of black people from the west side that went to apply and take the test, and it just didn't work out. And it was always the psych exam, where I don't even want to get into it because it's even deeper, but I'll say like the old saints used to say while we're talking about rediscovering lost value. I love the Lord. He heard my cry and pitied every groan. Long as I live and troubles rise, I'll hasten to his throne. It's Throwback Thursday right here on the Brunch Bunch. When we are crying, we have to remember that the Lord hears us.
Absolutely.
And he pities our cries and our groans. But when trouble rise, we just have to hasten. We have to hold tight to his throne, because he is the master of it all.
Well, believers, I want you all to put on the full armor of God. I know I sound a little solemn today, because what's going on in the world is just weighing me down. I literally have to recharge, and sometimes you have to take a beat and recharge. So I'm asking you guys, put on the full armor of God, and go out and be protected. Have that hedge of protection around you. You know, it's
Well, before you go, when you talk about protection,
Yeah.
I want to get in on that protection.
Come on.
Somebody say protection.
protection.
Free COVID-19 vaccinations will get you protected. We are going through a racism pandemic. We're also going through the COVID-19 pandemic. And today is the last day to get your appointment to get vaccinated this Saturday at the Greater St. John Bible Church, 1256 North Waller. If you would like the COVID-19 vaccine, please call Sharon Jones, 773-294-0879, 773-294-0879, and you will see me there. And lastly, I want you to be protected, not just physically, not just spiritually, but financially. And Regis has partnered with the Brunch Bunch, and they are hiring. They said if the people call and say the Brunch Bunch sent them, they will get them to the top of the line and expedite them through the employment process so that they can be working. All you have to do is go to www.rgis.com/careers, www.rgis.com/careers. The pay starts at $16.75 an hour, and they have morning shifts, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock for 5 to 8 hours, or evening shifts, 6 to 10 for 4 to 6 hours. And it's doing inventory in the stores before they open or when they close, like major brands like Target, The Gap, Old Navy. So if you're looking for a job and you want to be financially protected, go to www.rgis.com/careers. And speaking of protected, I'm protected. Tammy's protected. You all are protected. We out of time. We protected. Go ahead.
Well, if you were talking about jobs, and I wanted to alert you guys to a jobs bill that State Representative Ford is chief sponsor on, and we need your support. Child Care Advocates United was the author of the bill, but he brought it on home. It came out of committee yesterday and it's going to the floor. Please go on ilga.gov and look for HB 141. Fill out a witness slip in proponent status. That's very important. Proponent, meaning you support a $1 copay cost share for eligible parents and families so we can get Illinois back to work. That's HB 141. Go to ilga.gov and fill out a witness slip. Proponent. Whenever you invest in children and families in the Illinois or America, your return on investment will be realized 1,000-fold.
I love it. You know what? I love the Brunch Bunch, too. And you know what? Shout out to all the believers who called in, who texted us, who Facebooked us, who checked in. Shout out to Ashley Carter, who said, great show today, guys. Our goal is always to send you back better than you came. And on this Throwback Thursday, as we do every Thursday, in the spirit of Reverend Clay Evans, I ask you, no matter what you read in the news, no matter what you're going through, go home tonight, get in your bed, pray, say your prayers. Ask God to keep you and your family protected. Get in your bed, pull those covers around your shoulders, and go to sleep, because angels are watching over you.